I actually forgot to add a few columns to our activities model. Um, One of which is pace, so we want to be able to determine how fast the person was running, if it was a run, and the other is the date, and this is different from the created at date. So this would be like the actual date that they did the activity, which may not necessarily be when they're going in and adding it to the database. So to do this, we'll do Rails generate migration, add pace and date to activities. And for pace, we'll do integer. And that's because we're going to want to convert that into seconds. Um, and we can keep that as an integer. The next thing is date. And for that, we can do, I think it's date time. Yeah, date time. And I was kind of going back and forth between date time and date because date time has the time of day, and I think that could be helpful because sometimes people you can do more than one activity per day, and this way you can actually add a more specific timestamp. So let's just look at this again. Rails G for generate migration and paste and date to activities, passenger date time. Let's go ahead and run this. And let's open up this. This looks good. The only thing I want to do is set null to false on our date column. And that's because any activity that gets added, it should have some date time set in there. And we'll go ahead and run Rails db migrate. Okay, so that migrated. Let's just check out the schema file real quick. Activities, we got pace, we got date. All right, so now we're in a good spot. Let's run a quick git status, git add, and git commit this. So add pace and date to activities table and push that up. Okay, next thing I want to do is just kind of add these enums and create the association between the user and the activity. So I'm just going to copy this from the guides here. So activity, we have category, and the category is going to either be a run, a long run, workout, race, or other. I think that'll be good for now. So when you're doing an activity, it's either going to be a run, a long run, workout, race, or other. Strava has a lot more of these, and they're actually dependent upon what the activity is. So like if you're doing a run, you can say that it was a long run, but if you're doing a bike ride, you don't get long run as an option. I just want to keep it simple and just focus on running for now. And if you're doing anything else that's not a run, you can just say it's other. So if you went for a bike ride, a swim, yoga, anything like that, just go into other. We need to also do, so we have distance, difficulty. Difficulty will just be easy, moderate, and hard. I know Strava gives you like a lot of options here. It's on a sliding scale. And to be honest, I get kind of not overwhelmed, but I'm just like, there's just too many options. Like, easy can be broken up into 3 things, same with moderate and hard when you're doing it on Strava. And for me, I just like to have less options because it makes it easier to decide what I'm doing. And difficulty unit will be miles, kilometers, and meters. We can do yards too. Sometimes meters and yards are going to be helpful if you're doing something on a track. Like if you did a race and it was, 800 meters or 800 yards, that's where you would decide that. And pace and date, we'll deal with that in a minute. But we do want to do the association here. So belongs to user. And then on the user model, we also need to do as many activities. And I want to do dependent destroy. Let me make sure I did that right. Okay, so that's right. And what this means is when a user, let's say a user creates an account, they add 1,000 activities over the course of a couple years, and then they cancel their account or they delete their account. This means that any associated activity will be destroyed. So let's go ahead and run git status, git add, and git commit. We'll just say add enum values to activities and associate with user. Next, I just want to go in and write some quick tests. So we'll do, let's do a setup. And this will be similar to the user. So we'll just do activity equals activity dot new. And if I look at the schema, the only thing we need to do here, so it needs a category, but it's already got a default value. We need a user and we need a date. So that's all that we really need right now. And actually, we're going to need a reference a user here. So I'll do confirmed user. And then what we can actually do here is do user dot activities dot build. So this is similar to doing activity dot new and then doing user in here. That's kind of the same thing, but because we have this line here and this line here, Rails gives us this new method here, so we can see how many activities are on a user, and we can also build a new one or create. We can also do create, but in this case, I don't actually want to create it and save it to the database. We just want to instantiate a new one. And I think the only thing we need to do is date time.zone.now. Let's just do should be valid. Okay, so we're getting an error here. Let's see what's going on. Oh, you know what this? So this is a problem with the fixtures that were generated. So if we go to the activities fixtures, this was generated when we ran our first migration to create the activities table. And if you remember, I forgot to actually associate an activity with the user when I first ran that. And we took care of that with some extra migrations later on. But this fixture was created for the first time. It doesn't get updated after the fact. And this fixture is actually getting saved into a test database. That's where all of our tests are being run. So there is an actual real literal database on my computer, and it's basically a copy of the development database, and everything that's in these fixtures gets loaded into that test database. And the problem is none of these activities is associated with a user. So what I'm going to actually do here is, I think for now I'll just get rid of these because we don't need them quite yet, and I want to actually make these fixtures a little more useful. Like the names 1 and 2 aren't too helpful, and I still need to associate them with some users. So I'm just going to leave those for now, or remove those for now, and that passes. So I'm going to do, well, let's do a few more tests. So should be valid. I'm going to say should have a date, and we'll do, let's see here, activity dot date equals nil. Then we can just copy this, but instead of doing an assert, we can do assert not. Interesting. Let's actually put a by bug in here. So I'm curious to know why that's. Oh, you know what's actually happening? So even though I'm setting it to nil, it hasn't been saved yet into the database. So what would happen is if I keep it to nil and I do activity save, because right now it's not actually being saved, it's just instantiated, this particular test should throw an error. Yep, so not null violation, and that's because, where is it? Activities, date. So at the database level, it's like, no, you can't save this, you gotta have something in there. But we wanna also do the same thing, but at the Rails level, and that way Rails will show an error message on the form that says like, hey, add a date. Whereas this, I think this would actually like raise an exception within the application and bring down the application. So what we can do here is we'll keep that test. It's still going to fail. But then if we go to our activity model, we can do validates date. We can do presence true. Let's just clear this out, run that test again. Okay, so that's good. The last thing I want to do is, and actually what we want to really do first is, let's copy this. So confirmed user, I'm going to do with activities. Let's just copy this. Confirmed user with activities. Now we have their name right here. And then activities we can do. How should we do this? Confirmed user activity Let's just do 1. And actually, we can just keep it like that for now. So let's see. We need a date of time dot zone dot now, and we need a user, which would be confirmed user with activities, and I think that's all we really need. And this is just for setting up my test right here, which we haven't actually gotten to. So let me just copy this, go into users, test. Oh, this is a different one. I want to do user test, okay. And right here, let's just do test should delete associated activities. And we'll do user, well, I guess we can do it up here. So user with activities equals users, and then confirmed user with activities. So if we go in here, we can just do assert difference activity dot count, and it's going to go down by 1 because this particular user only has 1 activity, and then do user with activities dot destroy. And actually, I wonder if we can even, because later on, what I'm concerned with is later on I might like add more over here, and then what would happen is this test would fail because they have more than 1 activity. So I think I can do, let's just see what happens here. So if I can interpolate this, so it'll be user with activities dot count. I think that'll work. Let's give it a shot. Rails test models user and 18 is the test we care about. String can't be coerced into an integer 2i. That's because this dot count, oh actually no, I need to do 2i. I think this looks kind of sloppy. I don't know how I feel about this, but it'll make the test not fail in the future for the wrong reasons. So what was our last commit? Okay, so let's just do this. We'll just say we made some simple validations. Okay, so we'll save that. And finally, let's push that up.